Years of surveillance and one big strike to take out Khamenei. Let's get you details of how Israel actually tracked Khamenei for years. There are full details of how Israel carried out this shadow hunt. Years of spying before finally striking. In fact, Israel also hacked the Tehran traffic cams for years. So the traffic cameras were hacked by Israel, and it was looking at every movement of Khamenei, including the security cordon with him. And that is how they tracked down Khamenei and finally ensured that the strike took place at the right time when the top leadership of Iran was all under one roof.
Absolutely. So, Pathikrit, you know, as far as Khamenei is concerned, he was one of the most protected global leaders. And one of the only leaders, especially when we speak about the Gulf, who actually stood up against the US and Israel. Of course, there were economic interests and the economic sanctions that they had to face for several years. But Khamenei was killed on day one of the war.
So the Israelis may have planned it for decades, maybe 6 months before this. They exactly knew what they want to do so far as this war is concerned. But that particular day, this was not a pre-dawn attack. This was an attack right in the morning, around 8:15, when the first Israeli strikes happened. That kind of attack can only happen when there are insider information. Somebody actually informed them. It's not just the traffic, signals and traffic hacking of the traffic cameras. Somebody inside informed them that Khamenei may have come out of the bunker and there's a meeting happening with top generals and ministers. Now, that is a level of penetration of human intelligence that Israel has done. Otherwise, generally, you will not find such kind of attack happening in morning, absolutely morning. Now, the other aspect is invariably, the big level of confidence the Iranians perhaps have had on the Chinese air defense system they have put in. That didn't work out. The way the electronic warfare mechanism of the Americans and the Chinese completely dismantled the air defense and the early warning system that Iran had put in place, because it takes time for around, say, 50-odd aircrafts to come from Israel into Iran and by crossing over so many airspace of the Arab states, enter the area and then do this kind of a precision strike, knowing exactly the location where Khamenei was present. That kind of operation, number one, requires human intelligence at the last minute. That 8:15 in the morning attack was not planned probably 6 months back. It was based on very, very immediate information they got. But they had everything else as far as the SOP is concerned in place, and that's why they could do it. But this kind of attack, imagine that is the biggest anger the Iranians have, that those planes cannot enter the Iranian airspace without crossing the airspace of the Arab states, and none of them did anything. Neither they stopped them, and that has always been the norm. It's not the first time that they've allowed. From the Iraq attack in 1981, that has been the norm. Secondly, no early warning in terms of human visual reference of the same and being given out. So there was a massive jamming of the early warning system, communication devices, the radars, the surveillance things, and of course, perhaps even the missiles itself. And then this operation happened. This is, in terms of war, this is a classic case study of how, and probably what happens, there has been so many false flags. I think a time comes when you start believing that, okay, the negotiations are going on. There may not be an attack today or tomorrow.
As far as for the US is concerned to track down the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden, but as far as for Israel is concerned, it tracked down Khamenei on day one of the war, this conflict that has happened in the Middle East. Of course, there cannot be any comparisons that has been drawn here, but the situation, this is it, that has now been put across of what happened to Khamenei.